That was left-handed.
It's great to see you guys back here again. As you're watching along, as always, if you have comments, questions, or anything, as we eventually bring on Frank here, please type them in the chat. We're always monitoring that, so I'll bring him on, and I'll bring on Frank here in just a minute. But before I do so and tell you a little bit more about our guest for today, so I'll kind of put that up there. Obviously, we're going to bring on Frank Klepacki, audio director, composer, producer, sound designer, and more. That was a lot to fit in a title card, Frank, so we'll have to talk to you about that afterwards. But I just want to kind of set the stage for you guys here really quickly, because I was thinking about this. I was actually really excited about this interview because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I want you guys just put you back here for a minute. Envision it's 1995. You're maybe in your parents' basement, or maybe it's you're on your fancy 90s gateway computer. You just got home from CompUSA, and you picked up this bad boy. And if you know what I'm talking about, you finish installing the game, you hear Eva's voice during the game. Then you finally, whether it's you get online for a scrimmage game after you tell your parents, or maybe your brother or sister, whatever you do, don't pick up the phone. I'm about to go online. I'm about to play a video game. Like that's what this was about. That's what this epic game, I think we're going to talk a lot about. Obviously, Frank's done a tremendous amount more than just Command and Conquer, but some incredible hits that I think you guys are very familiar with. You know, some of my favorites, obviously, like you got Hell March, which we kind of led in with there, Mechanical Man, Just Do It Up, a lot of good stuff. So we're really excited to have Frank on and still be talking about this stuff, really why we're doing this today too, because they just came out with the 25-year remastered edition of Command and Conquer. And that's what Frank and I obviously were talking a little bit before the show, and that's how we got in touch. You know, downloaded the game on Steam, booted it up, messaged one of my really good friends, Jay, about playing this. And that's how this whole conversation got started. So Frank has just been fantastic. Again, a little bit about him as I bring his title back up here. But Frank, audio director, composer, producer, sound designer, in terms of things he's worked on. You know, obviously, video game titles at Westwood Studios, LucasArts, EA, Sega, Ubisoft, Disney, Hasbro, and more. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. I thought it was amazing too, as I was learning about Frank. He's been a drummer since the age of 11. That's awesome. That's just incredible. He formed a group, Frank Klepacki and the Tiberian Sons, performed at MagFest and PAX and GDC. Just incredible. So I know I'm kind of bragging about him, so Frank, you better hold up for everything we're talking about. I'm going to bring you on here in just a second in 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to bring you on. So without further delay, here we go. Hey, Frank.
Hey.
How'd I do? Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, you know, there's there's lots of history to go over. So
that's great. It's really great. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
I see you only put out a couple instruments.
Yeah. Drums, guitar, bass, keys, sing, and if I don't play something, I write charts for it.
That's great. Yeah, it was one of my questions I had. I'm like, what instrument don't you play? Looks like just about everything. So how are you holding up during everything going on right now?
Holding up well. Very fortunate. Healthy, doing okay, and still keeping busy despite all of the craziness with the hangups of especially in the live entertainment industry. A lot of touring and live shows are canceled or postponed indefinitely for now. So it's kind of tough to not have a light at the end of the tunnel yet to let us know when that's going to come back. But in the meantime, I'm busy in the studio, working on video game stuff, working on albums of future releases and things of that nature. So doing remote sessions, recording tracks for other people, even just depends. But that's keeping me going.
That's the best part. You got the studio in the house, and you're in Las Vegas, right? You're in the Las Vegas area. Everything's still on lockdown. The casinos back open yet, or anything going on there?
Yeah, so the casinos did open back up to limited capacity, but they're still keeping a lock on bars. They tried to see how that went for a couple of weeks, and then they kind of put the kibosh back on that. So unless they're serving food, then they can allow for curbside pickups and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's more restrictions on gyms and things like that. That's kind of where it's at for now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, like you said, we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel eventually one of these days. So we'll see. Well, I did want to kind of jump right in. We have a lot of ground to cover. We'll try to knock all this out as we always do in about an hour. But like I said, if you guys have questions in the chat and live stream, feel free to enter them in. Or if you have something you want to say to Frank, I'll do my best to put you on screen. And Frank will be monitoring along here with me. So I wanted to kind of start off. I obviously did a little bit of homework before this, believe it or not. It kind of start from the beginning, because I think one of the things I haven't heard from some things is specifically like, how did you get started in this business? Whether it be with Westwood Studios, how did you get started at Westwood Studios, or just, from age 11 being a drummer and then ...
So I'll try to do the short version, but
Okay.
but basically, I started performing professionally since I was 11 as a drummer, and by the time I got into high school, I was trying to form original bands with friends and see where that could go, because I was more interested in doing that at that time. So what I quickly realized is I had a hard time communicating song ideas to bandmates as only a drummer. I couldn't tell the guitar player a riff I was thinking of, because he would just look at me like I was crazy. So I said, okay, you know what? I need to learn how to play something else in order to be able to communicate, better. So I learned how to play guitar. I learned how to play keyboards, and that kind of helped me, get into a mode of being able to do that. But what it also did was it enabled me to, it made me want to practice more and get a little bit better at those things, so that I could write my own full, complete songs. And then I got a hold of an old cassette 4-track recorder and started, recording my demos and stuff onto that.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me introduced into writing original music. I was a gamer already at that time, so I mixed, the idea of putting music with computers by just programming in basic code on my PC and just getting it to play back stuff that I was inputting into it. And so that was kind of my first early experiments with that. But I was introduced to Westwood Studios because I wanted to get like a summer job, after my junior year in high school, between my senior year. And I heard about a tester position. So my cousin, Lewis Castle, is the co-founder of Westwood. And, he's the one that kind of put that bug in my ear, like, hey, if you want to, summer gig, we're hiring a tester right now if you want to get in. Oh, okay. So I went to go check that out. And I was really enamored with the process of making video games. So that was really the thing that kind of, intrigued me right away, was like, oh, wow, this is like behind the scenes of a movie set, but for video games.
Yeah, it's cool.
I get to see how it's put together.
And how old were you at the time? You think you were like what?
I was 16 at the time.
16. Wow. Doing testing. That's awesome. Good for you. That's great.
So yeah, and I admittedly I was not the greatest tester, because I got sidetracked and.
It's okay. You're a tester. It's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of people think, oh, testing video games, that's the best job ever. You just play games and get paid for it, right? Well, not really, because there's still work involved in that. You have to try to break the game in as many ways as you can think of. So it's not just like get through the game and play it and make sure it works. It's like, no, what happens if I go all the way to the top left of the screen? What happens if I go to this building that's just a prop? What happens if I
do this thing 100 times in a row?
Yeah, all of these things. So then you find bugs, and then you write them up and write up how you did it. You submit that, the engineer or artist or whoever needs to look at it, then tries to fix that problems, and then sends it back and says, okay, try to reproduce this.
Do you remember some of the original games you were a tester on by chance?
Yeah. Let's see. I tested. I worked on Dragon Strike, the PC version.
Okay.
Before I ended up doing the NES version later as a composer, which is a different story. But I tested the PC version. I tested Vindicators on the Amiga, I believe.
Yeah.
And what else did I test? I tested like a later version of like Nightmare on Elm Street or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah, I had a few things that I was working on. And yeah, so that was just a great introduction to the idea of how games are made, and I was just enamored with it. So, anyways, long story short, I go back to school. I don't get invited back to keep working as a tester but I'd met a lot of great people there, you know, just talking to
Yeah.
them and getting advice or insights. And one such person that I, you know, connected with was the audio director, and his name is Paul Mudra. And I submitted some of my demos to him just to listen to, and said, hey, you know, this is what I've been working on at home. You know, I'm a drummer and do my own music. You know, what do you
Yeah.
think? And so he listened to it, and I think you know, he was intrigued by what I was able to do at that young of an age. And I'd gotten to actually jam with him a little bit, you know, on the
That's cool.
drums,
Yeah.
and just kind of have some fun. So anyways, I said, hey, you know, if you need an assistant or something after I graduate, you know, be looking for a job at that point. So let me know if I can be an intern or help you out in some way. And he's like, all right, I'll think about it. And then so he gave me a few things to kind of test me on, you know, some software they were utilizing at the time. How quickly would I take to it? How would I get to you know, just use the stuff and take some direction from him initially, and that sort of thing. So and then after that, I was just kind of on a trial basis working with him, and then I just moved straight into being a composer at that point, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's incredible. That's cool though, and that's I find like that's generally how things happen, right? It's like little stepping stones for everybody, and then you get there. I think it's funny they didn't bring you back on as a tester though. So it wasn't meant to be. It worked out for better reasons.
Yeah, it was my introduction to what game development was, and had I not had that, then
No,
this
yeah,
would have never happened. You
yeah,
know? So
totally,
I have to
totally.
be thankful for even being not that great of a tester.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God you were not that good of a tester. Yeah, so you mentioned Dragon Strike. I pulled up a little bit of your CV, and it looked like Dragon Strike was that one of the first titles you did at
That
Westwood?
was the first one.
That was the first one,
So, like I said, the PC version was already done, and
right?
you know, and Paul had already done music for that. But for the Nintendo version, it was different. So it was originally a dragon flight simulator on the PC, and that was what was really cool about it.
Really? Yeah.
For the Nintendo version, they made it more of a top-down, you know, scrolling, you know,
Hmm.
shooter kind of thing almost,
Hmm.
you know, with a dragon, and you know, being able to go, you know, down into where the land is, and then come back up top and do combat from both perspectives. So because it was so different, he's like, you know what? Why don't you come up with some new stuff for this? It's on the NES. It's a good, you know, sort of entry level composition type of
Sure.
platform, because the NES was so limited in its voices. You know, you could only have I only
Yeah,
had like
totally.
three FM voices, you know, mono voices to work with, and a white noise channel. That was
Hmm.
it.
Right.
Drum
That's
and
it. Not
so
much to work with.
yeah. So I had a melody and a bass line and a harmony that kind of alternated in between them, and then a little rhythm pattern, and that was my first game that I worked on.
That's incredible. And I'm going to admit, so I had in my notes here that I was going to pull Dragon Strike from my game of NES, my library of NES games behind me.
Yeah.
I actually don't own Dragon Strike. It's I looked at I have it's the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons series, and I have
Right.
two of them. I think there are three or four. Someone probably keep me honest here, but there are certain ones that are rarer, and lo and behold, Dragon Strike is one of those titles. So if there's anything we said, Dragon Strike's a rare cartridge to own, and out of the 500 plus games I have on my shelf behind me, I do not own it. So I'm both embarrassed, and I guess you should be proud that it's a rare title. So
Yeah.
if you
Well,
own a copy, I don't know if you still own a copy or not.
I do. I've got a copy of everything I've done. I mean,
It's
it's
awesome.
packed away someplace, but I've got them.
There you go. You know, it's probably worth at least $60. You know, if you ever need it. These NES games, man. But yeah, then also too, like I saw you worked on, you know, one of the games too you worked on early on was The Lion King on the Super Nintendo. I'll bring that over here. See, we got some fancy abilities here to do some things on stream. Yeah, right. But The Lion King, I thought this was super cool. Again, in doing my research, the question I had was, and like you just talked about, right? You're taking a game and porting it to the technology. Obviously has limitations, much more than you can probably go in depth and detail than I possibly articulate. But here, you have a known soundtrack, right? There's known songs and tunes, and now it's like, oh hey, Frank, good luck, have fun, like try and do this. I don't know what your thoughts are, if you could share what that process might have been like.
Specifically to what?
To take like you know, Lion King and the music, you know, hits by like Elton John and stuff, and the songs that were huge, you know, from Lion King, and then just even it being a Disney property, right? And how to
goes over into the SNES,
exactly,
right?
yeah, how to
Yeah.
put them in the SNES, right?
So yeah, that was an interesting project and very enjoyable to work on too. But we got an advanced copy of the movie score,
Oh, okay.
obviously, so I could start picking it
Yeah.
apart and figuring out how I was gonna reconstruct it for the Super Nintendo. Um, and it was funny because like the Elton John stuff, we didn't even get his versions. We had the demos of
Oh,
those
really?
songs that were sung by somebody else. Like Circle of Life was sung by like a Middle Eastern guy,
Oh,
you know.
Jesus. But
So
that's how
like
all these games were done. They like would give you a demo or something, and it's like, okay, hey, come up with a game based on this storyline, and we need it released by X date. You're like, okay, sure.
yeah. So but I mean, we had a good amount of time to develop it, from what I recall.
Okay.
But the challenge was taking something that's completely produced and fully orchestrated and dumbing it down per se into 6 voices, and I had to sample all of my own instruments to put into the SNES for playback.
Oh, wow.
So I had to kind of cleverly figure out which things I was gonna do in what way. For example, in Circle of Life, there's that chant. There's a vocal chant,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's
The
lyrical
background,
and
yeah.
behind what the melody's doing. So I actually had one of the guys in Westwood who could sing pretty well come on and actually do that, and I recorded him, so it sounded like
Get
a
out of here.
chant. And then I just sampled that phrase and then just looped it with the song, so it sounded like it went with it. And then I just substituted lead vocals for instruments like flutes and
Yeah.
things of the sort of tribal sound of what the Lion King had. And it's really is a wonderful score. I really did enjoy it and enjoyed working with it and
Mhm.
making gamified versions of them. So like something that had more bounce to it, more, I don't know, cartoon like, I guess,
Right.
rather than the seriousness of an epic score. And they actually sent one of the guys from Media Ventures at the time, Hans Zimmer's company, to
Hans
approve
Zimmer. Wow.
my versions of the tracks. Once I'd finished them, so he came by and
I'm a
once
huge Hans Zimmer fan, but side note, huge,
yeah
huge. That's so funny because I love his style. It's amazing. Sorry.
yeah sure. So anyway, so yeah, he had sent one of his guys over to approve my stuff, and he didn't realize what exactly we had to do for these versions of the songs until I started explaining to him why they had to sound a little bit more primitive and all this. And he's
Yeah.
like, wait a second, so you've got to take all this and cram it into what? Because I mean, if you think about it, we had to take all of that data, MIDI data, sample data, all of that, and it had to fit on the cartridge, but it also had to fit within like 11K of memory at a time.
Insane.
So, yeah, it was pretty ridiculous, like the way we had to circumvent the system.
Right. And that's why I mean, like that stuff's super interesting to me, right? I mean, like, yeah, I can't even imagine, right? I mean, that's super cool.
But one of the benefits of working on that too was that we got to see an advanced copy of the movie that wasn't finished yet. It was like I mean, it was, the length of it was finished and the audio was all there and the songs and everything. The voice acting was there, but the animation wasn't finished. So it would get like through a sequence and then it would turn into pencil drawings and then it would go back to a fully animated sequence,
man.
and then it would cut to like storyboards and then it would go back to a sequence. So it was kind of chopped, where they hadn't finished parts of the movie yet.
And they're like, you signed this NDA, correct?
Oh, yeah. Leave your stuff out of the
Yes.
out of the room, no cameras, no phones.
We have these bulky camcorders. We're like, I'm just trying to sneak this thing in.
And we were literally in a sequestered room.
Well, I imagine, yeah. I mean, that's why I say too. I mean, like it's a Disney property. I'll talk about Star Wars here in a little bit too, hopefully. But I mean, like that.
Yeah.
What a cool opportunity! Like, yeah, that just seems like such a cool story. I thought when I found that you worked on the title, I'm like, and that game holds up gameplay wise, like incredibly well today. That and Aladdin are two like people remember, I think, specifically as Disney titles on the SNES.
And ironically, both of those games were re-released together.
Right.
Like, yeah,
That was like what, 2 years ago or something. They did that. Yeah, they know there's some coin there, so they're going to get it. And they're great games. They're super good games. They're really hard and they hold up really well.
Yeah,
Um,
a buddy of mine was playing it for the first time recently and telling me, "Hey, man, this thing is like ridiculously hard."
yeah, ridiculous. That's how games used to be. There weren't save states, and I think probably now there are save states in those games because
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have to do that now. But that's okay. That's cool. I thought that was a cool story. I did want to talk about Westwood though, just in specific. Westwood Studios again. Like I feel like just a household name at the time that so many of us grew up with on PC and other titles. Were there any stories? I have to show it's of course it's part of the gig here when you sign up. I got to show like an old photo of you at Westwood Studios or something. I feel like it's what
yeah.
you're supposed to do. But are there any kind of fun stories? I always ask some of these questions about things maybe you remember at Westwood Studios at the time, kind of back in the heyday or anything.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's lots of stories. I mean, you'd have to kind of ask me something specific for me to
Oh
recall
boy,
stuff.
I don't know if I have any. I wasn't there. I got nothing. I don't know if
Oh
there any
no, I mean,
shenanigans going on or anything fun.
oh yeah, yeah. There's always some jokesters. In fact, the president of Petroglyph, where I'm at now, Michael Egg, he was quite the jokester and the prankster back in the Westwood days. He would be him and a couple other guys would get together and just kind of pull little harmless stunts on stuff like they would get like a speaker and wire it all over through the ceiling of the building into somebody's office and then start playing like cricket sounds through it or something, just to annoy people,
Bluetooth was not a thing.
or just put a whistle on somebody's exhaust on their car, so when they fire it up, you know,
It's fun stuff, right? Stuff we
yeah,
don't do
but I
enough.
mean, we had a family, environment there. Everybody was really connected and really appreciated each other's talent in terms of what we were working on, and it was just a really great experience there. Great years. I enjoyed what I did so much, and working with the audio team and all of the. We had a full size green screen there, so we had like actors that were coming in and in full costume and doing sets and scenes just like we did for Command and Conquer
So they
or
shot all that in the same office that you were doing
yeah,
all the yeah
shot all of it on the sound stage and green screen stage that we had built there.
those ridiculous costumes
Yeah, yeah.
that we all fell in love with, right?
Yeah, no, it all had charm to it, and we even had nickname actors in there in some of our later games.
Oh yeah, for
We had
sure.
the opportunity to see some of them or meet some of them and hang out. So it was cool.
That's super awesome. A question did come in from GB Daniello. Hopefully, I'm getting that right. How many games in total have you worked on?
It's on
Well,
the
we'll
credit
accept
page of
reasonably
my
close.
website.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll accept a range, if you will.
Yeah. No, it's quite a few. I don't know, 50-ish, 40. I don't know,
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
it's huge. Though. I
Maybe,
mean, yeah,
maybe more. But I mean, it's that's just games. I mean, I've done a lot of album work. Whether I've put out my own albums or guest appeared on other people's or produced other people's albums. Done television work, so it's just kind of all over the map. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
And
quite a
that's
bit.
one thing. That's one thing, for myself that I found out too, in doing my research. If you go to your website, I'll plug it for you for frankklepacki.com. But if you go there, you'll see the TV shows that you've done. I think a lot of the UFC and MMA stuff too. I think that's
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah,
Um,
they licensed quite a bit of my music,
yeah,
and then a lot of other shows after that have licensed stuff for me too. And then I've done some specific scoring directly for some shows as well. So
which is so cool, right? And then all the bands that you are a part of or been a part of, and the albums you put out. I mean, it's more. So if you're watching along, it's a lot more too. I know we're obviously talking very heavily about video games today because it's kind of everything we know here by and large. But Frank has done a tremendous amount out there. So make sure you check out his website if you guys want to. It's frankklepacki.com or it's .org.com. Is it .com? .com. I got it right the first time. A few more questions coming in. Let's see. What's your favorite classic arcade music score? I don't know if there's I'm kind of a little bit arcade music score. I'm not sure.
yeah. Well, I mean that we touched on this just before the show, but I actually have the coin op of a game from the '80s called 720 Degrees, and it's a skateboarding game. It's where the famous skate or die thing came out of, and That's actually not only my favorite stand-up arcade game of the era, but it's also my favorite music from a game of that era as well, because it was really cool. It had that FM synthesis. It sounded very much
Yeah,
like what you would hear on a Sega Genesis,
yeah.
or the early like Ad Lib or Sound Blaster cards of that PCs had. So it
Hmm.
very much has that sound to it, and I loved it. And so yeah, that would be my
Sega
top.
always had like a grittier feel. I'm probably not getting the correct term right, but as opposed to like people can always tell a difference between an SNES sound card and a Genesis sound card too.
Yeah, because well, the Genesis used FM synthesis primarily, and then there was a sample chip in there too, where you could like get voices or real drums in there or something just to kind of spice it up a bit. But the SNES, you had to sample your own instruments into it, so it was really
Hmm.
varied from game to game in terms of how that was going to sound.
Did not know that. A lot of good questions coming in too. John Rokas, you did a collaboration with Tina. Help me out here.
Whoa, Tina
Guo.
Guo. Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Tina's a good friend of mine. We started off just working, professionally, and we met on a show with Video Games Live, which is a touring symphony that does like greatest hits of video game music. And so I was a guest on there. So I was playing guitar and playing an orchestral arrangement I'd done of Hell March, like
Mm.
one and two together.
Yeah.
And so this particular show we were at, I believe it was during Comic Con actually, and Tina was also a guest, and she's an amazing cellist. Has a real like distinct style of her own, which is what sets her apart from a lot of other people. And so we got to chatting backstage, as guests, and she really enjoyed what I'd done performance, and I enjoyed her performance. And so she said she did a lot of session work in terms of video game compositions. People hire her to play on or whatever film scores. So I said, yeah, it'd be great, to, keep in touch, get your info. And, if there's a session that comes up, then I'll let you know. Well, sure enough, I had a project I was working on where I wanted to have live cello on. So naturally I gave her a buzz, and we worked out the logistics and hired her for that. And she dug what I did so much, because it was more of a metal hybrid thing that I worked on. And she happens to be a fan of heavy metal.
I was gonna say
So
you and metal. I can't imagine, right?
yeah, so then she said, "Well, I'm actually wanting to work on a metal album of my own, and I've got some stuff I've already done, but you'd be great to like work with on this if you can help me out." I'm like, "Sure." So then she hired me to work on that, and that
Awesome.
was kind of how that came about. And she was really happy with that result, and she ended up doing a show for a release party. It was for her cello metal album, so we co-wrote 3 songs together on that, and I produced it. So then that kicked that off, and so I went and played drums for her for the show, and that was a lot of fun. And
That's so cool.
yeah, so ever since then, she's been calling me to do, whenever she does her own solo shows, she'll give me a buzz and I'll go and perform with her. And then likewise, we've still done sessions for each other over the years, and we're actually working right now on a new project for a publishing company, and they're wanting to specifically have us do music that they're going to use to try to get syncs with for licensing and for TV and movies. And it's very similar to what we did on the cello metal album, because that's what sparked their interest in the first place. So yeah, that's coming along pretty well right now.
A
So
lot going on there. Probably more, John, than you probably expected. That's quite the story. I love it.
yeah.
That's really interesting. That's great. One more question before we move on. You guys are asking all the good questions. Is there a game theme that you're surprised became as popular as it did? From Kevin Molnar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very surprised actually that Hell March is as popular as it is.
Why? It's so good.
Truthfully, because I mean that's been the most popular track in the CNC series, and it has nothing to do with uh, what my intention was. It has everything to do with the fans chose it. I mean, and that's very flattering and humbling and awesome. I mean, I
It's
can't
just that
imagine.
intro. The intro is like, come on, there's nothing
Yeah.
better.
Well,
You were
that was
surprised by
really
that, though. I
that,
mean,
that was really what kicked it off for me as
yeah.
far as writing it, though. That intro, right? I actually woke up and went to work with the idea that it'd be cool is to write a heavy rock tune to the sound of marching boots. That was my initial idea.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got there, I found some, dug through some sound libraries, found some samples, loaded them up, and that rhythm dictated what I was going to do. So then I immediately picked up the guitar, and the first thing I played was that main riff. and
Really?
the song just kind of snowballed that day. I finished it that day. It just wrote itself. I was on in the zone, I guess.
Wow.
So I thought it was cool, and I was really excited about it, but I had no idea that it was going to become what it became afterwards, how it was received and all that. But if there was any indication that I was onto something special, it really was validated by our president, Brett Sperry, who also was heavily involved in the vision of what Command and Conquer was. And he said, one day, he said, "Hey, you got anything new for me to listen to?" Because he was always interested in music, and what we were doing. And I said, "Yeah, I just wrote this tune. I think would be a good theme for like Nod in the next game or something."
Hmm.
This before I knew what Red Alert was even going to be. I was just putting out ideas. So he sat down and listened to Hell March, and he's like, "Wow!" He's like, "This has to be the theme song for the game."
It
And I'm
was,
like,
and it's the opening. It was in the opening CGI, right? From what I
"Yeah,
remember. Yeah.
yeah." The whole intro to the
Yeah.
game,
Whole
yeah,
intros to it. It's just amazing. In the end, it finishes with this coming together, the console like coming together, and then it just starts up. It's just amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. No,
that's
it made
surprising.
a made quite a mark in history. But I mean, what's cracked me up is how much people have used it for other things
Oh
since
yeah.
then. Like, there's all these other videos of people using that song for like other military demonstrations for other
Oh really?
countries. There's somebody put it to a Pokemon parade where there's people marching in Pokemon outfits to it. It's just hilarious.
I guess that is pretty cool. Like you start seeing like it show up in weird places,
Like,
and
it's become a video meme now. I don't
yeah,
know.
like it's a
People
thing.
probably don't even know what it is, and they're just
No,
thinking this is funny.
definitely kids that are younger than us are like, oh man, this is a killer song. What is this? Who wrote this? You're like, that's me. I did this. I swear. It's
Yeah.
from, because it was in Red Alert, right? It was not in the first track
No.
list for Command and Conquer, right? I brought that up. Well, you can't see it here. It's obviously too small. But were there any ones that stood out? Maybe I'll ask a question too on the. You can't see it here because it's too small. But on that first set list from Command and Conquer, that were just
Uh,
a favorite of yours.
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, when we get into favorites, pretty much, and this is probably going to jump ahead a little bit, but
No
now that
fun.
we have the remasters of Command and Conquer out, there was an album that I did, with the Tiberian Sons, because we performed live for the first time at Magfest a year and a half ago, and that set list, I basically chose that set list, and those are basically my favorites of the whole series. So when you talk about Tiberian Dawn, then you were talking about Act on Instinct,
Hmm.
Warfare slash Full Stop, Rain in the Night, what else? Industrial, Mechanical Man. I
Oh,
mean, those are,
man, yeah.
yeah. So those are all favorites of mine for sure.
So good. So good. So good. I do have to ask too, kind of going back to the and great questions, guys. Keep them coming. Keep them coming in as you guys have questions here on the chat. But so we're going back a little bit. We're at Westwood Studios. You went from tester to doing audio composition and production and doing all this amazing work. Obviously, then on Command and Conquer, and this thing becomes a hit, right? I mean, Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
I looked it up on Wikipedia again. Probably can't. Maybe you guys can see or not, but it's still one of the top-selling PC games of all time. Really, it sold 3 million copies by '97. I mean, so when I was looking at this, I'm kind of thinking, and I was thinking, well, you're probably still a younger guy in your career relative at this point in time, and now it's like, wow, like this thing is a thing now, and RTS was just getting started too. I mean, what was kind of going through your mind at that time?
Well, we knew we had a special, fun game on our hands with the original CNC. We didn't know to what extent, how successful it would be, obviously, because you can never know that sort of thing, especially with a new game or a new IP. But we knew that it was special because we were really just creatively, feeding off of it and enjoyed playing it even in development. During development, we'd stay late and be playing against each other and taunting each other over the intercom system before there was even, chat and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
um so that was, those were good times. But so then when it got released and became such a success, we're like, wow, this is great, this is incredible. So but it didn't really dawn on me yet how it was gonna snowball into even more of a success and be a franchise and be a
Yeah,
thing. When we got into doing Red Alert, it was that was yet again, just we were having a blast making these games and just going crazy with the stuff you could do in that. And
Was there a tremendous amount of pressure when Red
we were
Alert was
also
coming out?
able to refine things a bit. We were able to,
Okay.
refine the gameplay, do some enhancements of the quality of, interface and how things worked, and then musically too. I refined my sound for that too. I originally was wondering if they were going to want me to do anything that was of the era that Red Alert takes place in, because I didn't know
Gotcha.
initially. I didn't know initially that it was going to be a prequel and go back in time to like World War II era, you
Right.
know. But in Hell March was the first theme I wrote for it, essentially. So with that being already the theme, they're like, no, let's keep the modern, edgy, rock, electronic, hybrid thing, but maybe make it more industrial, or give it some character that kind of defines Red Alert, and but maintains your sound from previous CNC as well. So that was kind of the thinking going into that.
That's so cool. Um, it just blows my mind because I feel like you're just going from just getting started with the project to CNC, and then was there a lot of pressure too with Red Alert? Like when this is coming out, it's like, oh man, this soundtrack I put together for Command and Conquer was killer. Now what am I going to do? How am I going to up my game? Like, what did you? Again, this is where this is not what I do, and I don't have the experience, obviously, anywhere nearly as close to what you know. But how do you kind of mentally prepare yourself for that? And say, okay,
Um,
here we go again.
It was more about making sure that the gear we had was up to snuff,
Okay.
actually. So that was the main transition from going from CNC into Red Alert, as far as my process or what I was thinking about. Because CNC was one of the first games that we released that had, audio playing back as WAV files, even though they were compressed and whatnot. It was the way that those songs were recorded. Before that, we did everything with MIDI and either used the console playback or used the PC card or whatever. So now we were utilizing a newer tech, and that was exciting because I was happy that we could, hey, I can actually use my real synthesizers and have real guitar on it and all of that.
Yeah.
But then when we did that soundtrack, I realized, man, it would be really nice if I had some better stuff to you know up the quality a bit
Sure.
more. And so got a better guitar amp. I got better synthesizers, or more of them, better samplers. And then I was able to utilize that with Red Alert, and I felt that that did in fact step up the quality because I had more tools at my disposal that had more quality instrumentation and
Yeah.
programmability for me to utilize.
Yeah. You could experiment a lot more. Was there any, I had the question here, any particular influences that, just in your style, like we've talked about metal and you've mentioned synthesizer and Hans Zimmer, but any type of like music or genres that, or content that kind of inspires you in some of the work that you do all across the board, not just limited to CNC, I guess?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're anybody who's a composer or a musician. I mean, we're all a product of our influences and what we got started with and what spoke to us initially to
Hmm.
even inspire us to want to get started in that
Yep.
kind of career. So for me, I mean, the first name I have to always drop is John Williams. From the compositions for not just Star Wars but so many other fantastic movies, and Jaws, and Memoirs of a Geisha, and just
Hmm.
go down the list. E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, but Star Wars in particular connected with me at a very young age. I think I was probably 4 the first time I saw it on video. I didn't get to see it at the theater, but I saw it on video. I heard it was supposed to be this cool thing, and there were toys out, and I was like, "Oh, that looks neat. What is this?"
Yeah.
Well, think about how Star Wars starts. If you've never seen it, you didn't know anything about it. It starts with the logo fading to black and then scrolling text, right?
Hmm.
Now, if you just watched that with silence, it would seem kind of boring and, all right, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
But as it happens, it starts with John Williams' fantastic fanfare right in the beginning that
Yeah.
just really gives it punch. And
Yeah.
just from that, I was hooked. I didn't know anything about this movie. All I'm looking at is words crawling up the screen. But
You're 4 years old.
this music grabbed me right away,
Oh,
and
so good.
I was in. I don't like, this is the coolest thing ever, just the music. So
Yeah.
that's an example of how music moves people, and how
It's so true.
well done music moves people. And so that connected me from day one. My parents were musicians, so
Hmm.
I was always around that with their bands rehearsing, and their music that they liked to listen to, and all of that. So
That's
it was
incredible too. That's super cool. Did
yeah,
not
so
know
that was
that.
a natural environment for me to be in. But I didn't start formulating my tastes until I started really thinking about becoming a musician. So I got my first drum kit when I was 8 and started taking lessons. And then I started thinking about drummers that I liked in different music at that time because I was wanting to get better at that. So
Mhm.
immediately I'm listening to The Police and Rush and Led Zeppelin
Yeah,
and bands like that are I'm like these guys have badass drummers. I need
yeah,
to
they're like the greatest drummers, right?
I want to learn how to play like them. And so rock and roll and heavy metal was sort of my springboard for genre that I listened to the most when I developed my own music taste. And then later I really got into funk because another life-changing moment for me was watching the film Woodstock, which is about the concert of 1969, famous concert Woodstock. And all of the bands of that era were participated in that concert: Jimi Hendrix, Santana, The Who, you know and so many others. But and that was the primary reason I wanted to watch it, because I liked all those bands. But the Sly and the Family Stone segment that came on again just blew my mind, because this was a band that was playing like funk music, but mixing it with rock and
Right.
psychedelic music of the time, and with R&B, and with a little bit of jazz, and just whatever. And it's an eclectic group. I mean, you've got horns, and you've got guitar, bass, drums, keys, multiple singers, and it's 7 people. And I'm like, how are 7 people making this sound? and and then when you see the way 400,000 people in that audience react to their set, it's very clear that they stole the show
Yeah.
of the entire 3-day event. And that just, I said, that's what I want to do someday. That right there. And so then I wanted to learn funk, and I started picking up James Brown and Stevie Wonder and Tower of Power and all of these kinds of bands of the 60s and 70s, and that really spoke to me. So that formed my early tastes in music. And then, of course, when it comes to film scores, I still paid attention to that stuff. The next film score uh, composer that spoke to me after John Williams, right up there with him as far as I'm concerned, but completely different, is
Mhm.
Vince DiCola. And he
Hmm.
did the soundtracks to Rocky IV and Transformers the movie in 1986. And that was a pioneering uh, thing that he did with synthesizers. He made a whole score out of
Yeah.
synthesizers, and they sound huge and they
Yeah.
sound amazing.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
like,
Yeah.
of all of the 80s stuff that I listened to growing up, nothing sounded that powerful with synthesizers and keyboards. And it
Oh
was very
yeah.
progressive, and the composition was
The
unique
Rocky
for me.
soundtracks. I mean, yeah, those are up there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I heard nothing like that, so that moved me just as much, and that was another thing that I just took with me. So all of this is my journey into music and into becoming what informs my composing state of mind. I draw from those kinds of influences from my early years, and then everything I continue to learn since then. Even to this day, there's new things that I pick up from different bands or artists or composers that I can be like, wow, okay, that was cool. I haven't heard it quite done like that. I might take a piece of that for something I work
For
on
sure.
later.
Yeah. And you're still, I mean, you mentioned Sly and the Family Stone, right? I mean, you want to talk about the work you're doing there and some of the bands you're involved with too. You and I were chatting with
Yeah, well, that
about
was a dream come true moment for me. Was that I basically got to be their drummer.
that. Yeah. You can say
um,
it. It's okay. We'll allow it.
so and how that happened though was it goes back many years, which is while I was at Westwood, I had a funk band of my own called Home Cookin', based in Las Vegas, and it was a 10-piece band with 5 horns, and it was feeding off of all of those influences I spoke of, because I was also writing for the band too, co-writing with the different members. So that was there was a fan site. The internet was new at that time, and there was a fan site for Sly and the Family Stone, and I kept tabs on that just to see what some of the members were up to, and who's doing different projects. I was interested in following what they were doing. And there was a message that said, if you want to wish Jerry Martini a happy birthday, it was his 55th birthday at the time, send us an email and we'll forward it to him. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. So I didn't expect to hear anything back. I
No, of
just
course
wanted to write a note and just express my appreciation to the guy if I had the ability to do
not. Hope he
so.
reads it, right? You know?
Yeah. So I just wrote a happy birthday email to him, and I said, hey, I'm a huge fan. Your band is one of the reasons I love funk and love horns specifically, because he was a saxophonist in the band. And you know, I hope you're doing well, and hope you're still playing, and you know, have a great birthday. You know, and that was it. Just something simple like that. And so he actually responded back to me personally from that, and to thank me for the note, and thought it was great that, you know, I was a younger generation who loved that era of music, and he was interested in hearing my band. So, you know, he asked me to send him a CD. So I ended up doing that, and he
What?
loved it. And we kind of stayed in touch ever since, and we were kind of email buddies. And then when he started touring again with the Family Stone, he would invite me to the show, and I'd come and check it out. And I was, you know, so I was happy to know the guy, let alone, you
Yeah,
know,
I'd be like
having
happy if you just emailed me back probably at the time that, hey, I got an email.
yeah, you know, so that was really a cool moment for me in and of itself. But then in 2008, at that time, you know, some of the original members of the group had come in and out of the band, you know. So but Jerry has been the guy that really has held it together all these years, you know. And so there came a time the original drummer wasn't performing with them at that time, and they had another hired gun, and he was making some changes in the band. You know, some things were, you know, going south with management, I think, at the time. And anyhow, I just had a nice friendly chat with him backstage when he was in Vegas, and just kind of cheered him up a little bit, and he appreciated that. And then he called me up and said, "Hey Frank, remember, you know, that conversation we had?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I'm going to make a couple of changes in the group, and I'd like to invite you to be the drummer." And I'm like, "What?"
You're like, oh, well, yeah, let me think about it. What'd you
Yeah.
say? What did you say?
Well, I said I absolutely would love to, and I'd jump on that in a heartbeat. I was like, I just got to figure out how your touring schedule works, though, because I've got a full time video game job. You know.
Talk to my employer and my wife, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
or
So, but as it turns out, they mainly play weekends, and so that
oh god,
left it.
I can't imagine the pitch to where were you at? Were you at Westwood at the time, or were you at?
Petroglyph. I was at Petroglyph at that time.
How did that conversation go?
It went fine. I mean, basically, I just said, "Hey, would you guys mind if I took an occasional day off here and there to travel and be able to do these tour dates?" And they're like, "As long as you're meeting your deadlines, yeah, we're cool with that." I'm like,
Uh,
"Okay." So I was basically using vacation time to go tour, you know, and but
hey,
I made it work.
you love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just made it work, and it was great. It was a dream. So and so then and then after I did that for 3 years, then the original drummer actually did return to the band. So then I took a back seat and would just fill in for him. And then as of a couple of years ago, he's decided now to take another hiatus. So now I'm back and touring with him again.
How amazing is that? That's a
Yeah.
good story. See, I love these kind of stories. These are
And
great.
and to cap it off, last thing on that
Yeah,
is talk about a full circle dream come true. All right, it started with me being 12 years old and watching Woodstock for the first time and becoming a huge fan. And then last year, I actually got to perform the 50th anniversary of Woodstock at the site with them.
that is
So
amazing.
that was just like,
So where do you go from there? What do you? I mean,
yeah,
you get on the plane on the way home, you're like, oh shoot.
yeah.
Like,
I was so honored to be part of that at that time. It was amazing.
what an amazing honor. Some more great questions coming in. John Rokas, he knows his audio stuff, so he's going to put you on point. He actually does some work himself. So, have you
Cool.
ever done any work with Junkie XL? I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I haven't worked with Junkie XL before. I'm familiar with him though, and I know that he has probably one of the largest synthesizer collections on the planet. So,
Really
yeah. I mean, you should look at one of his videos where he tours his room. I mean, he's
setup
got all
rigor.
the vintage stuff, everything. It's nuts.
It's a dream. That's cool. A question from earlier too. I want to go back to, and it's always funny how I have to say these interviews always go. I tell every guest before I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have about an hour, and then I'm like looking at my clock. I'm like, oh god, it's 9:53, and this is
It's okay.
great.
I've got time.
Yeah, we're having fun. This is great, and I appreciate you guys putting these questions in. You're awesome. You make my job easy. So this is a two-parter. Favorite project to work on, and what's your least favorite, and why? I don't know if you can share anything about that.
Well, favorite project is Star Wars: Empire at War,
Okay.
for obvious reasons. Huge Star Wars fan since I was a kid, so I've groomed myself my whole career for that moment. So that was another dream come true. Loved that every minute of that. Um, and then the
Which was at
least
Petroglyph,
favorite.
right? It was that was the first game at Petroglyph, right?
First game Petroglyph that we did, yeah, and it was an amazing process, amazing journey. I could talk all day about that.
Yeah, I did want to ask a couple questions, or maybe even we'll get one about that. But least
Yeah,
favorite. So let's see.
least favorite, it's really hard to say. I mean they all have great. I mean the one that I've brought up in the past that I cited as kind of that was Order of the Griffin, which was a TurboGrafx Dungeons and Dragons game we did, and the game itself is great. I say least favorite for the technology of how the music was playing back in that game, because there was some buggy stuff with it that we just could not figure out, and so it was disappointing to me when you go into a level and it would take the tempo from the previous level and apply that to the new music
Sure.
that came in, and I'm like, oh man, this is like messing it up.
That's a
So
hard question to answer too. 'Cause I feel like it's kind of like if someone in your day-to-day job asks you like, so what's your least favorite thing you've ever done at work? It's like, what?
yeah,
Like I enjoy like most of what I do. If not anything else, I wouldn't be here. Like I enjoy what I do. It's like, well, what don't
yeah.
you like? It's like, and the amount of time I imagine you put in these projects too. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's more about the obstacles that you have to face, or if you went through a really hard time,
Yeah,
just through the development process like that. That's really more of the thing that sticks in your mind in terms of like, oh man, I just couldn't wait for that to be done, or
correct.
oh
Yeah,
man, if we only had better tech or whatever. It's just stuff like
totally
that.
different question. Yeah. So sidebar, Star Wars related, Jedi or Sith?
I'd go Jedi. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have our disagreements, you and I. Uh, but that's good. I did have a couple of fun questions to ask in here too. Are there any hidden gems or Easter eggs? Maybe some of the soundtracks you did, or things that like you mentioned, like some of the sound clips or sound bites that whether for like Hell March or other things. It's kind of one of those things you always wonder when you hear these things. I mean, obviously they're audio samples or things, but anything you're particularly proud of, or something maybe again we don't know about that's in some of your work.
So a couple of little Easter egg things. Well, one thing is in Command and Conquer, in all the games, or at least specifically CNC and Red Alert, though specifically, there were tracks that were buried in the mix files of the game that weren't actually intended to be part of the game's release, but they were just buried in the mix files, the code. And so because the modding community was so strong, they ripped apart these games and they discovered those buried tracks, and they're like, wait, what's this? I don't remember hearing this. And then so they wanted to make their mods that the music was part of the game, and then this became like the thing that people really wanted to hear. They didn't understand why that stuff wasn't meant to be in the game or whatever. And a lot of that was because back when we were trying to figure out what the game soundtrack should be, a lot of that decision wasn't necessarily made by myself. I just kind of cranked out a lot of different things and variety and just tried to see what would stick. And a lot of the final say and the final decision came from either my audio director or the president, or the leads on it that felt one thing didn't quite fit. So that was really more of the reason for that, but it stayed in the canon of the mod community for so long that people just expected that should be part of the game rather than its original intent. And then same with Red Alert, there were some tracks that were buried in that, not as many, but still that people still ripped out and wished that it was still part of the game. So when it came to the remastered collection that's out now, of course, I honored that mentality and made everything available across the board. I remastered all of those hidden tracks, and put them in the game. They're in the jukebox. They're accessible right away. But there's hidden tracks that are unlockable in the remastered collection that were never released and that no one's
Not
ever heard until now. So I found
I don't really go online since I've downloaded. I just go online and do skirmish every time. That's all I'm doing. Just
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
It's great.
So yeah, but if you play through the campaigns, you unlock these hidden songs that were previously unreleased and never heard before. Um, and or I might have leaked them on my website as demos, for fun at
Yeah.
some point, and people were like, "Oh my god, why wasn't that in the game?" So then of course I had to put that back in. So that was kind of fun. Those are some Easter eggs or some hidden gems that were uncovered in the remastered process that are now part of the game. Going into Star Wars Empire at War, there was an Easter egg, an audio Easter egg I put in where when you're building up your base and all of that, you can build I could think a cantina and a hut palace. And if you do like a special button combination, like I think it's a control alt click or a shift alt click, it starts playing the music from the
Oh, no way.
cantina or from Jabba's palace. So that's
That's
kind of
amazing. To
yeah.
check that. I'm sure that's on the web somewhere. I have to check that out. And you just mentioned Star Wars Empire at War, right? And that was, and I know you mentioned that was one of your favorite projects. I did want to hit on that a minute because I'm a huge. We both talked about this beforehand, like how we're huge Star Wars junkies. I got my Star Wars pin behind me. My
Oh, yeah.
son's named after Harrison Ford.
Yep.
Again, similar to some of the pressure. I mean, like, what was that like? I mean, you've got Star Wars, you've got John Williams, and then you, Frank, and it's like, hey, we want you to do this game. I mean, what was that process like?
So again, first game at Petroglyph. This is my first game as an audio director now.
Okay,
So up at Westwood, I was primarily only the composer.
gotcha.
I would occasionally help out, with some sound design or some voiceover stuff, but for the most part, we had a lead sound designer, audio director handled everything else, and I was primarily the composer.
Hmm.
At Petroglyph, uh, I was hired as the audio director in charge of all audio, so not
Wow.
just music, sound effects, voiceovers, implementation, all the technical stuff.
And
And
Star
so
Wars.
and now first game out the gate is Star Wars. Well, they couldn't have had a better person who's an expert with Star Wars audio than myself, in
Yeah,
terms of my knowledge of it, because I know all of the sound effects in all of those movies. I know what they all go to. I know all the voices, what they're supposed to
all the
sound like.
blasters, doors
Yeah,
opening, anything.
and of course the music, because that's one of
Yeah.
my big influences too, is John Williams. So even though my own orchestrations are not necessarily, just like his, when it came to Star Wars, I understood his composition and techniques and sound that are part of those iconic films. So first thing I do is I go, okay, I'm not going to treat this like, okay, I'm going to put my thing onto this. I'm going to treat this like I'm a fan, number one. What would I want to hear from this game if I were playing it as a diehard fan?
Correct. Yeah, I like that.
And so my mentality was make sure everything is exactly what it's supposed to be that is from the movies. So anything that we reference from the films, the music goes with that, the sounds go with that, the voices go with that. Everything is set up as, in relation to canon. Um, but in terms of stuff that we're doing, that we're adding to the game as expanded universe stuff,
Hmm.
or different worlds that we haven't seen before, or more open battles that aren't specific to an event, that's where I can insert some original stuff. So I did compose some original music in the style of John Williams, but the goal was to blend into the rest of his music that we're using, not to stand out. I wasn't trying to be like, yeah, here's the Frank stuff. Yeah, check that out.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Completely opposite.
you're not gonna win that battle.
No, I was I was like, all right, I want to make this just blend right into the Williams
Yeah,
stuff. I want it to
yeah.
sound like it could have come from him, or at least be in the neighborhood of
The universe of it. Yeah, right.
yeah. So it was, even though it was original music, it was very much stylized in what he had done. So I blended in. When it came to the sound design, of course, Ben Burt is the sound designer for all the films. One of my heroes for that,
Mm.
because he's so inventive. Listen, I studied all of the way that he came up with those sounds.
Yeah,
So
that stuff's amazing.
it's really just, it blows my mind. How do you think of that? Like,
The tech that they used at that time, I've seen so much of that documentary stuff too. It blows my
yeah.
mind.
So that
And
was
it
really,
still holds up. Like all that is what we know and love and holds up today.
he is an icon of sound
Right.
design. Just he always will be.
It's
So again, I'm kind of treating his work in the same way. I'm like, okay, the sounds that I'm going to come up with for these new vehicles or weapons or whatever, they can't be too different from the stylization of the sounds that he's come up with. So very
mhm.
same thing. I wanted to blend in with what he'd done and make sure it sounds like it could have come from, the same sound libraries that he, created, versus trying to put something signature and specific of my own. Not going to do it.
Yeah.
Same thing with the voices. I helped out with their voice department at LucasArts at the time, where crack team of guys that really just know their stuff. And so when we had early conversations, we all knew that we were all on the same page right away. So it wasn't going to be an issue to work together at all, or understand what the needs were. And if anything, I had a blast just helping audition some of the parts that we needed. And there were some fun moments. One of which, in particular, that I have fond memories of was I was looking at Imperial voices, and we hired real British guys, guys that were legit,
Yeah.
There was one guy in particular who auditioned as an Imperial soldier or officer, and I said, "This guy sounds just like General Veers. We got to get him for General Veers in the AT-AT."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, you're right. He does sound like him. Cool. We'll hire him." So then we get on the session, and he's doing it from the UK, and he looks at the script and he goes, "General Veers," and we're like, "Yeah," and he's like, "That was my dad."
No way. Get out of here.
We just looked at each other like, "Oh my god."
And this is just for his like first reading. He's like, wait, what am I reading? This is what I'm reading. Oh, that's my dad.
Yeah, his dad was the guy in the movie.
You're like, all right, we're done. You're hired. Go ahead. Let's just record it now.
So we were just like, score, because we had no idea. We just hired him strictly on his voice,
Oh my god. So is he the guy you ended up with? He's the guy you picked? I mean, yeah, you have to be at that point.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that was a no-brainer. But we didn't know that bit of information until we got in the session with him.
He didn't have. Yeah, I guess. Well, that's not something you want to list on your resume when you're doing. My dad was. Like, that doesn't really get you a job, I guess. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
Oh man. And did Star Wars, whether it was like LucasArts or John Williams, or I mean, like, what were they? Did they have like any say? I guess is what I'm trying to articulate is, did they have any kind of blessing they had to give you with that game to where they'd say like, no, this does not meet the quality or the expectations or the style of Star Wars, and was there anything like that you had to kind of go through?
Well, yeah, I mean, but that was strictly through LucasArts. So,
okay, yeah,
their team, had approvals on that stuff.
Gotcha.
And actually, a funny story about that too was when we first got started, their audio director at the time, he was he didn't get the memo that we were submitting a first playable level. Okay. So he looked at this thinking that this was somehow the final game.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I get this whole list of critiques back, like, yeah, the voices don't sound quite right, and we need to get him the movie sound effects, because I was ripping them all out of the movie at the time just for the demo.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gotten the keys to the real sounds yet.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just plugging in the Williams music and just getting a first demo together. And I did all the voices myself.
I thought I read that somewhere, like you did like Bosk and like I thought I saw it somewhere online, like you did some of the original voices.
Yeah, I actually did end up as some of the more obscure characters.
I was going to ask you that. Well, come on, Bosk is not that. I mean, but
for the demo, we had like the hero characters, Han Solo, Darth Vader, all of this. So
you voiced those in the demo?
Just for the demo. And so the critique from the audio director comes back and says, yeah, half the voices don't sound right. And I'm like, half? You gave me half?
I will take it.
So we were all just cracking up at the studio about this, because he didn't realize that. And then when he figured out that this was just our first playable, he's like, oh, and then he started laughing with us. So
you're like, are they hiring for episode 1? Oh, well, gladly, yeah. Maybe I could do some voiceover work. I passed for half. You might as well sign me up. I'm good.
Yeah. Kind of funny.
Dude, that's super cool. I just, like those, I can't even imagine it. I think that's so amazing, and I appreciate you sharing those stories with us. It's really cool. I do want to, kind of fast forward. I'm keeping an eye on time. You're trying to be respectful. But I do want to fast forward. I want to talk about, as I mentioned at the beginning, kind of how we got here today, and talk about CNC Remastered Collection, right? This just came out in what, June? Was it June that came out?
Yeah.
So we've mentioned a couple times too, for people that know, you're at Petroglyph Studios now, and you've been there since when? How long have you been there?
14.
Yeah. Yeah, just 14, 15 years. Yeah, and then you guys just remastered, and I did a little research about how this whole project started, but I was kind of curious from your standpoint, again, just kind of maybe giving us a little bit of insight. I'm kind of curious too, like how this started. When was like the first email or phone call you got, like, hey Frank, like, we're gonna redo this thing Command and Conquer. You're like, what are we doing? Like, how, and then how that whole process happened, I guess.
Yeah. So Jim Vasella, who was our producer at EA for the project, he reached out to Petroglyph in the summer of that year, which was 2018, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. And so so then I got a call from from the guys at Petroglyph saying, hey, Jim Vasella from EA wants to come out and meet with the team. So here's the date. Just give me a heads up. Like they want to talk about possibly doing remaster for Command and Conquer. So and you're going to be a big part of that. Obviously, the reason of reaching out to Petroglyph was obviously because the Westwood development people that were there that actually had worked on the game. He thought who better to ask than the guys that worked on the original games to remaster that.
Right.
And kind of get the people that put the initial love and care into the originals for the remastered version. So and Jim's very passionate about the franchise himself. He's worked on a good number of the titles at EA that came after, and was a big fan of the series and a champion for wanting to do it right and wanting to do it authentically and to present the best possible versions of this for the fans of the series. After hearing, some of the critiques of, their mobile game that had come out, Rivals, right before that, everybody wanted to see CNC return to PC.
Yeah, you want the real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so he felt this would be the best way to kind of kick that off. And so that was the first that I'd heard of it. And in the meeting, as far as, it went really well. And we had good talks about, what our thoughts would be about going about remastering, what our initial first kind of moves would be, to kind of get a sense of where it would kick off and the direction we would want to head in. And we're all on the same page pretty much from the get-go, and it was just a matter of scheduling it out.
Yeah. So it took about, so I'm doing not that good at math, but about 2 years was the total project then to
we got started at the end of 2018 officially, so about a year and a half, I guess, is more of the, but about a 2 year from the point of contact to getting things kicked off. What was ironic about that was I was already planning the MagFest show with the Tiberian Suns.
Right, so you're already working on some of this stuff too, probably, right?
I started working on the versions that we did live early, the very beginning of 2018.
Gotcha.
So we were that was already in motion. So then after we officially started on the game, I had to tell Jim, I was like, dude, just so you know, I'm putting on a concert of like the best of CNC music.
Full disclosure.
In January, it's already booked and we're advertised on it and all of that. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's totally
even
cool.
better, free marketing for us.
Yeah, right. So, but obviously, what we didn't realize yet, once we did the show and it went off great, Jim of course watched it, on the internet, and he was really impressed with that and wanted to actually invite us at that point to record studio versions of our live show to be as a bonus album for the remasters. So that was dream come true for those guys, because they were fans of the game already anyway, and because they named their band after that. And then I asked them to join me so that we could do the show together, and it just came full circle in that way for them too. It was pretty cool. But yeah, I was really happy with how all that came out, and many fans were saying, you guys got to release your live show, and so we're like keeping a tight lip on this the whole time.
Yeah.
Like,
we can't tell you about, but I mean, like going back to like when you start working on it, I mean, these songs or the original sound files or clips or sound effects, kind of, where were these things? I mean, were they on some?
They were all digital audio tapes. We call them DAT tapes. They're tiny cassettes about this big.
Yeah.
And that was the format that we archived everything back in the day.
But so did EA have these, or did
EA had quite an archive of a lot of stuff. They found DAT tapes, they found videotapes, they found all kinds of stuff. Jim actually went and looked for that stuff personally, and then we sorted through everything that we had, and so I was able to locate all of the original mixes that I had done on DAT tape for all of the songs in those games. except for a handful. No matter what I did to look for everything, like I think there was six total tracks that were not able to be found, and I
Okay.
literally had to recreate those songs
Across both
from scratch.
CNC and Red Alert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had to recreate those songs from scratch
Oh
and
my
make them sound
God.
exactly like the original versions.
Did you
That
have any original compositions still, like anywhere or no?
Well, I didn't have any of the sessions, so
Yeah.
it literally had to be from zero,
Oh
from the
gosh.
ground up. But
Wow.
I did keep my old gear from back in the day, so I still have my old
Yeah,
synthesizers
because I mean, how are you going to
behind me.
reproduce it, right?
So I was able to faithfully, reproduce exactly, if not 99% exact, how those were supposed to sound and be mixed and everything. And so that was an interesting exercise in the remastered process. And then the
Oh,
other thing I had to
it's
do was I had to recreate all of the sound effects too from scratch, just about. But at least I knew the sources that those came from that we had at the time. I also had that stuff because I again mirrored my studio that I worked in personally with the one I had at work. So thankfully, kept keeping all of that vintage stuff paid off for the remaster.
well, note to self, as evident behind me, hoarding's okay in small doses. As I'm sure, like a lot of people, both whether you're into music or video games, know, because I mean, you might need it, right? Case in point, so you can make that argument.
I would have
Um,
never guessed I'd be working on this stuff 25 years
but
later.
it's so awesome, right? Or even that we'd be here. Like I kind of always started too. It's like we're talking about CNC and all these games, Lion King, Dragon
Mhm.
Strike. We haven't talked about things like Dune 2, and we talk about Star Wars, and there's so much that you've worked on, and it's still incredibly relevant, and it influences a lot of culture. Um, Interesting question just came in too. I didn't have this on my list. Great question, Matthew. Thanks for that. Any plans on a remaster? You might have an NDA. I'll give them some cover here. But on Red Alert 2 or Yuri's Revenge in the works
Well, it's too early to even know
with a
because
reception.
EA is still kind of gathering up data from the release of the
Yeah,
remaster we've done. What we do know is that they were very pleased with how everything came out and how the reception's been so far, and obviously it's been reviewed really well. And so all of those are good signs. We hope that maybe that could be the next move, but we really don't know.
yeah. I mean, if you guys haven't downloaded it, I forget how much it is off the top of my head, quite honestly, but it's awesome. But
1999,
yeah,
I think.
it's like I got on there, I'm like done. Like,
But it's like it's CNC, it's Red
right,
Alert, all the expansions for those
it's
games
everything.
too.
Yeah,
3 expansions, and we threw everything, but the kitchen sink in there. I mean, all of the bonus content alone is worth the price of admission. I mean, we've
yeah,
uncovered all of the multiple takes of the video outtake scenes and all of
everything.
the bonus music that I found that was unreleased, and there's photos of the team back then that weren't released, and just all kinds of stuff. So
And you can get online, like I said, a lot easier than you used to be back in the day. And then what was the other thing too? I mean, people are on there playing. Like I pretty much go on like every other day right now and get on for a game, and just the
yeah,
sound effects. And it's cool too how you can toggle between the older version and the upscaled version. So
yeah,
like when you first start the game, it'll start like I don't want to call it lower res, but the original how it was everything was scaled back in the day, and then you can hit I think you hit spacebar and it changes it to the
yeah, and
upscale
it's
version. Yeah,
done
and it's
yeah.
dude, it's super cool. I mean, it looks so clean, and you can zoom in like
Mhm.
uber close, and it's everything you remember, like the unit loading and all the, construction complete, like everything. It's
Yeah,
just the
one of the things we did is actually, we actually hired the original voice actress of Eva to come
oh
back
no
and
way. You
redo all.
re-recorded those?
Yeah, yeah, those were all re-recorded. The reason being was because that was the first game, and
Yeah,
like I said earlier, we wish we'd had some better gear, when we worked on that, and then we were
sure.
able to up the quality for Red Alert. Well, we recorded her, in a padded closet in Westwood Studios. I mean, with a first microphone and preamp that we had available at the time, so it's not like we even had a chance to get a proper setting for actual voiceovers. Um, and she sounds exactly the same way that she did 25 years ago. Her
Who
voice is
made
not.
that? Who made that call? To
That was me. I
you
I,
did?
I immediately said we got to get her name's Kaya Hunsinger. I said we got
Okay,
to get Kaya back to do this because this is our chance to like make super clean versions of these
that you can
audio
have forever
files.
too. Yeah,
And I loaded up all of her original files for her to reference so that she could
She
really
could practice and
mimic
emulate.
the
Yeah.
tone and the delivery of the way that she did it back then, and recreate that as authentically as possible.
I'm gonna have to listen to that. It's just so iconic, right? Like even as I had that trailer as we kind of started the stream, and I started pulling down some of this content, where again, like when you first boot up the game and it's like talking about how it's installing, it gives you like it's that CNC feel, like that chill of her voice and your music and everything. I mean, there is nothing like it. That's really cool that you recaptured her voice too.
Yeah, thanks. No, it was a blast to do. She had a good time.
Oh man, that's awesome. So I think we're pretty much caught up in the chat on some things. I know some questions have come through. We might have covered some of them a little bit earlier. We're talking about Lion King and some other things. So I think we're gonna move ahead to, oh, my camera just went out of focus. What I think is kind of sometimes my favorite part of the stream here. Let's see if I can get that back. I just went all blurry on you. There, I'm back. My favorite part of our streams is the lightning round. So I did give Frank a heads up that this is where we have a little bit of fun here at the end of usually our hour, but this is great. So we do a lightning round here with our guests. These are kind of off the wall questions, Frank, and there's a little bit more pressure on you than normal because we always have our guests do a formal lightning round sound effect. So being the sound guy, you better crush this thing, or else you're going to be judged to the end of time. So as our audio savant, your best lightning round sound effect in 3, 2, 1. That was officially the best ever. So I asked, I forget who was our last person. I asked him for a lightning round sound effect, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? What am I talking about? Like, just like make like thunder or something, lightning round sound effect. Do something." Yeah, you killed it. So you held your own. All right, so we're gonna breeze through these things. Nice work. Favorite soundtrack or work you're part of? We may have touched on this earlier, but still.
Star Wars, yeah. Star Wars is always gonna be the top.
Favorite CNC song?
Favorite CNC song? I can't do one song, man. Listen to the Frank
How many can we allow you?
The
2
Frank
or 3?
Klepacki and Tiberian Sons album. Those are my favorites. All of them.
Okay, all of them. Favorite CNC game?
Oh man, the original is so iconic to me. Tiberian Dawn. I mean, I love that one a lot. But I also love Firestorm expansion from Tiberian Sun and the Yuri's Revenge from and Red Alert 2. Those are great.
I felt like they added Red Alert 2. Oh, jeez. Red Alert 2 is up there for me. Like, I love Red Alert 2. Nod or GDI?
Gotta go Nod.
I
wear the uniform, so I gotta go Nod.
There you go. Which Command and Conquer did this gentleman appear in?
That would have been Red Alert 3.
And who is that gentleman for extra bonus points?
Tim Curry.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, you got to meet some famous actors. Tim Curry, he's up there. And there's a lot of other ones.
So what was cool was Gina Carano played the Soviet saboteur in Red Alert 3. I think it was one of her very first roles that she did.
Was she in?
At the time, she was a fighter. She was a professional fighter for.
Was she the one? And she was a Mandalorian, and she is that? Yeah, right.
She's in Mandalorian now, yeah. But she actually walked out into the ring to Hell March.
That's amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she was in Mandalorian. Well, she was on like I remember she was in that, and then they was in like when they rebooted like American Gladiators back like early 2000s. She was in that. Oh my God. It's wild. Tim Curry. Did you get to meet Tim Curry?
No, I didn't get to meet him. Because when I was working on Red Alert 3, I just did some of the main themes, and then I was there for the orchestra sessions, but I wasn't there a lot on set for the filming.
Yeah, it's still cool though. You could say
I got to meet Malcolm McDowell. I got to meet him.
Malcolm McDowell? I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
He was in Red Alert 3. He was also in Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah.
I got to meet him and we chatted about our experiences on the game. So that was fun.
Oh yeah, also known as Crush on American Gladiators. Thanks, Ken, for that. Yeah, that's who she was on American Gladiators. Did you meet Michael Bean? Michael Bean?
Yeah, he was at Westwood when we did filming for Tiberian Sun. So yeah, he was there on set or on the green screen. So that was fun. James Earl Jones, he was there. Actually got his signature on a Star Wars poster
Oh,
uh,
nice.
of mine from the original Star Wars. That was really fun. It was actually a fun story that he shared with us. We asked him like, what his best gig was that he'd ever done, and he said, "This is CNN." It was like, I guess the highest paid thing, and it was only 3 words.
That's it. That's it. All right. So we talked about Star Wars. You're a Star Wars nerd too, I think. I say it as a term of endearment. Favorite Star Wars film of all time?
Empire Strikes Back.
Done. Agreed. Agreed. Anyone in the chat thinks otherwise, just hit like leave or close us out, or Empire for sure. What's on your personal playlist right now? What are you listening to?
Personal playlist right now. Let's see. I really enjoy the band Dirty Loops. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not.
They're like a funk jazz trio out of Sweden, and they are just ridiculously highly skilled, amazing musicians and arrangers. They got their sort of thing of they got their initial notoriety on doing YouTube covers of like pop songs, cheesy pop tunes,
Yeah.
whether it's Britney Spears or Justin Bieber, stuff like that, but just rewriting them, basically, just making them awesome funk jazz tunes.
Yeah, it's cool.
That you actually would enjoy listening to.
Dirty Looped.
Yeah.
Are they on like Amazon or Spotify? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
They got an album out and a lot of YouTube videos.
That's awesome. So we mentioned at the early onset of the interview, you're in the Las Vegas area. Have you ever been to Gold and Silver Pawn Shop?
Yes, I have actually.
What?
Yeah, I've checked it out. Yeah. I didn't try to pawn anything, but I walked in there.
That's cool. I was expecting a solid no on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we used to watch a lot of the shows. The Pawn.
Dude, I love Pawn Stars. Not gonna lie. If you did any music for Pawn Stars, we can break out a whole other hour for that. But it's just same clips and sound effects they do, right? You did something. Did you do that, or did you?
They used some of my album stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna book another hour with you, so I get your commitment. Okay. Favorite casino or spot in Las Vegas?
Wow. One of my favorite spots, particularly for live music, is a place called the Brooklyn Bowl in Las Vegas. Yeah, I would say probably there.
Okay.
Great sound, great stage. It's nice and open. And yeah.
Brooklyn Bowl. What are you looking forward to most post COVID-19? We can all get back out there.
Oh man, what aren't we looking forward to?
Anything.
Just being able to be out in more often around people again. Just I miss performing live. Obviously, that's something I really want to be able to do again.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner than later. I miss the ability to go to conventions. Just gathering for things that we're all passionate about and that we share love for. That's what brings us together. Hockey games, man. Las Vegas Golden.
Oh, you're a hockey guy. See, I had a question on you. My next question: the Las Vegas Raiders. What's the word? What's the word on the street there? You feeling it, or you not feeling it? It's hyped.
They just finished the stadium for them,
right?
So it's ready to go. So all they need is a football season to start. And,
just minor detail.
Yeah.
Are you?
I'm personally into hockey, so I'm all about the Vegas Golden Knights.
There you go. Are you playing any games right now? What games are you playing? Anything?
Yeah, I've been playing. Well, I'm playing one of the same games for quite some time. I'm a huge fan of Conan Exiles, so I've been playing the hell out of that for quite some time. Still do. Most recently, I tried out Oxygen Not Included. That was pretty fun. Of course, I've been playing the Command & Conquer Remastered campaign again, just for the nostalgia of it. Well, and also just to kind of, I've had some time away from it since we finished development, and I figured, okay, now I can play it as a gamer with a fresh set of ears and kind of give myself the final critique on if I got the balance right. And sure enough, I was satisfied, so that was good.
Oh, that's cool. And last but not least, too, I want to give you some time. Any projects you're working on, or things you want to share, or things that you want to plug or talk about, for people watching the stream, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know if a lot of people know, but a good number of them do. But for people who are new to my work, or don't know that I do this on the side, I put out a lot of my own solo albums. I have 9 albums out right now, and there's more on the way. So if you did, just put my name in the search for any of your music preference platforms, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or Amazon or whatever the case may be, you'll see that my solo albums are up there. And I do a lot of stuff that's similar in vein to what I do in the Command and Conquer style, in terms of hybridizing electronic synth and rock and that sort of thing. But I'll vary it up a bit here and there, just do stuff that I feel like doing, and just to kind of add variety to the mix. There's 2 things that I'm going to be coming out with this year for sure. One is going to be an all metal album, 100% organically recorded metal album, that sounds like the old school stuff that I grew up listening to. So it's all like live recorded drums, live recorded guitars, just mics on amplifiers, not simulated stuff, not sample replaced drums. It's the real thing. No auto tuning on vocals. Everything's performed that way. And I've got several guests that I've pinged to be on it that are musicians and performers I respect. So that's going to be fun to get out. Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months is planned release. And then I'm doing an EP of about 5 songs. I'm calling the quarantine sessions, because it's basically what I've done on my own for my own personal mental health, if you will,
Yeah.
just to have something to do in lieu of live shows. And so I've done some remixes of some of my older solo album stuff, and also a brand new track that is also going to have some guests on it that are some good friends of mine and killer musicians. So yeah, look out for that news in the next 2 to 3 months here.
Perfect. And then if people, I've obviously got your website up here too, and then you're really active on social media from what I saw. What's the best place if people want to follow you or check out what
Yeah.
you're working on all the time?
So yeah, I have official sites for on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and also YouTube. So if you find my stuff on there, I post on there pretty regularly. I don't oversaturate, because I think that's kind of annoying. And if I have something important to talk about that I'm working on, that's generally what I will use it for. And I do interact with fans on there from time to time. Whether it's personal messages or whatnot. So
This guy right here. That's how you got here.
hey.
Hey, it worked out. No, but this is great. So
Also,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
the fact that you're in Cleveland too just reminded me that a relationship that I'm really thankful for, that I have for several years now, is with an Ohio-based company up in Akron called Audio Technica.
Oh yeah, yeah, for
The mic
sure.
you're looking at right here, and every mic in my studio for that matter, and my headphones, it's all Audio Technica.
That's a local name people have known for, I don't even know, decades here. I mean, they've been, at least from what I know, that's like a
Yeah,
household name here in the area. So
yeah, exactly. So I thought you'd be familiar with that, which is why I brought it
yeah,
up.
for sure.
But
That's
I'm a
amazing.
big fan of their stuff. Not because for any other reason other than it's really been very, I want to say, innovative in the last decade. What they've been able to do, or even more than that, the different products of mics that come out. I've systematically replaced every older piece of gear that I've had in the studio over the years with their stuff, because it's just tonally giving me a better
The
result.
best. Yeah.
So
Well, this has been awesome. Can you believe we burned through an hour and a half, by the way?
yeah, I can believe it.
Well, we did. So I think with that being said, again, I really want to thank you, Frank, for coming on. This has been great. It's kind of, like I said early on, this is kind of the fanboy in me a little bit too. This has been great, kind of learning how a lot of this stuff happened, and always a huge history buff too, but just in how much work and passion that you put into this work then and still have now, and how much you're involved and everything. I think it's really, really fascinating. Even doing my research, I'm blown away by, and even to your last comments too, how much stuff you're still working on, the bands, all the projects, everything. It's fantastic. So if you guys take anything away from as one footnote from me, check out what Frank's got going on at his website. There is a ton of stuff out there, and you can actually there's a, when you're up on there, you can just click on his work and you can listen to all that stuff on there. Or like I was finding on Amazon, like you can find it on Amazon Music's playlists and stuff there. So please check that stuff out. It's super cool. Like, it's just really fascinating. So long way of saying thanks to Frank for coming on. We really appreciate you having you, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that came to check this out and ask questions.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
All right.